I always thought winter was just something you put up with out here. A season you outlast, stacking wood, patching leaks, buying cheap boots on sale every fall. I never imagined the coldest thing I'd ever face would walk on two legs, wear a cardigan, and hide behind a clipboard. But that's how it goes. Sometimes, the real freeze isn't outside your walls. It sits in your mailbox, signed sincerely, the board. They didn't just steal my firewood. They tried to steal my promise to my daughter and the memory of the night I swore to my wife I'd never let the cold win again. I remember the night Lana died clearer than the day she was born. Maybe that's how grief works. The hospital lights buzzed, her hand already cooling in mine, and outside, ice-battered Redcliffe, Montana, like God himself was slamming the shutters. The blackout took half the county. My little girl, Ellie, huddled at home with a neighbor, 8 years old and learning what it meant to lose a parent. As Lana's breathing faded, I made a promise right there. Never again. No more cold inside these walls. Not for Ellie, not for me. That was the vow I carried into every hour, every log split, every single thing I did that long, lonely summer. Our house sits on the edge of Pine Hollow Estates, one of those neighborhoods where every mailbox is beige, every blade of grass is the same height, and the biggest threat to the American way is a dandelion or, God forbid, a woodpile. I kept to myself after Lana passed. Paid my dues, nodded at neighbors, kept my pain private. But grief sharpens your eyes. You start seeing the cracks under the paint, the power trips hidden in small rules. That summer, prepping for winter was my whole life. Ellie spent days at camp. I worked parks and rec, and evenings were for the axe. I split pine and spruce, bought a little pellet stove, built the pile along the house just like Dad taught me. Off the ground, tarped, nowhere near the siding, nothing anyone could call hazard. It wasn't pretty, but it was honest. Ellie would help in her own way, handing me wedges, cheering at every clean split, asking if this winter would be different. I swore it would. By September, I had 3 full cords stacked. Ellie drew our house for a school project. Smoke curling from the chimney, would stack high, purple crayon across the bottom. Our cozy castle. I taped it to the fridge. You hold on to things like that when everything else feels like it's slipping. But there's always someone watching. One Saturday, I spotted a couple across the street, sunglasses glinting, snapping photos like they were on safari. Scowl. I knew in my gut. Sure enough, next day, a letter in my mailbox. Notice of violation. Firewood called a visual nuisance. $125 a day, fine, until it was gone. I just stood there, letter shaking in my hand. Then I did what Lana would have told me. Wrote in red across the bottom. Permitted under Montana law, Title 70, Section 314. Call the sheriff if you've got a problem. Taped it to the window. You'd think that'd be enough, but no. Another certified letter, more threats, disrupting community harmony, fire hazard. Fire hazard. This from the same folks who wrapped lights on bone-dry trees every Christmas. I highlighted the law, sent it back. Happy to help you interpret the statute. I added. Silence. No knock. No call. Just more eyes, more whispers. Late October, the trees went gold and the cold crept in. One morning, a white SUV parked across the street. Windows dark, engine running. Just sat there, watching. I started moving wood into the garage at night. Not hiding, just being smart. A week later, an orange flyer, bold letters, final notice. Now with pictures taken from the street, accusations of willful disregard. Remove the wood or face enforcement action. I gathered every scrap of paper, every law, every HOA bylaw. Wrote back, cited chapter and verse, attached photos. Dropped it at the clubhouse. 3 days later, another letter, fine started $125 a day. They called my pile a structure, like a shed or a barn. Like sweat and memory could be measured in concrete. That night, I emailed everyone, board, property manager, especially Pamela Drexler, president and tin pot dictator of Pine Hollow. Kept it professional, asked for a hearing, copied city code enforcement. Got a cease and desist back, warning me I was hostile, threatening my voting rights. That's when I realized it was never about the wood. It was about power. They couldn't stand that I knew the rules better than they did. Couldn't stand that I wouldn't fold. I looked out the window at the stack, at the tarp flapping in the wind, and felt something I hadn't since Lana died. Anger. The kind that makes you stand up straight and say, "Come on, then. Let's see what you've got." Then it happened. Cold, gray morning, Ellie skipping off to school in her purple parka. A white truck with a flatbed rolls into my driveway. No logos, just a clipboard and a smirk. Two men jump out. One heads straight for the pile, the other flashes a sheaf of paper. Photocopies, nothing official. I told them they were trespassing. Section 9.3 of the covenants. They say, enforcement after notice. No court order, no sheriff, just their word against mine. The second guy starts pulling off my tarp, grabbing logs like they're his. I put myself between him and the pile. Touch one log, and I call the sheriff. No reaction, just cold calculation. They'd done this before. Then a black SUV arrives, Pamela Drexler herself. She gets out, looking like she smelled something rotten. "You've had time to comply," she says. "We're here to resolve this." I looked her dead in the eye. By stealing the wood, I split from my daughter? She didn't blink. The board voted unanimously. I told her this wasn't about looks, it was about control. "Call it what you want," she said. "If you interfere, we'll document obstruction." Logs hit the flatbed, thudding like a judge's gavel. I started filming. Called the sheriff. Dispatcher was polite, but couldn't do anything. "Civil matters, sir. File a complaint." By the time they left, nearly a cord was gone. I watched my summer's work, my promise to Lana, drive away down street. Pamela turned, said, "We have standards." I replied, "No, you have cowardice." She left. The driveway felt empty. The house colder. I watched the footage that night. Saved every clip. I didn't sleep. Ellie shivered upstairs, bundled in every blanket. I sat at the table, combing through laws, HOA rules, news clippings. By 3 a.m., I drafted a letter, board, city attorney, state housing office, local paper. Attached photos, footage, receipts. Added, "You didn't just remove logs. You removed the only reliable heat source for my 8-year-old daughter. This is more than a dispute. It's a failure of decency." The first reply was from their lawyer, all legalese. Board acted within authority. Structure presented concerns. Cease further inflammatory correspondence. I printed everything, drove to City Hall, handed in my packet. The clerk didn't even look surprised. "You're not the first," she said. "Drexler's on a tear." As I left, a man in a Marine jacket caught my eye. Tom Harlan. "You the Firewood guy?" he asked. I nodded. "They fined me for a solar panel," he said, shaking my hand. "Veterans Hall, Sunday at 6. You should come." That weekend, I focused on Ellie, banana bread, old movies, rationed the stove. Burned every scrap I could find. Monday, the real cold came. House dropped to the 40s at night. Ellie's cough started. By Wednesday, she was pale and shivering. "I'm okay, Daddy," she whispered, but her forehead burned. I drove into town for fuel. Hardware stores bare, but the co-op guy slipped me a sack of scraps. I lit the stove, sat by Ellie's bed, holding her hand, counting her breaths. Her fever broke at 3 a.m. I exhaled for the first time in days. Then I got mad. Real mad. They hadn't just taken my wood, they'd risked my child. That was it. Next day, I called Tom. The woman fined for her roses. The hunter cited for a trailer. Word spread. Texts, porch talks, nods at the mailbox. Janet Keller opened her garage. 32 neighbors showed up, breath fogging, stories tumbling out. Bird feeder fines, door paint citations, flags measured and shamed. I play my video. Silence. Then Gordon, quiet guy 3 streets over said, "My nephew does HOA maintenance. They burned your wood in the clubhouse furnace." A ripple of fury swept through the room. I stood. "That's my wood, cut to keep my daughter warm. And they're using it for themselves." Janet said, "So what do we do?" "We stop complaining alone," I said. "We gather proof. We shine a light so bright they can't hide." Tom nodded. "Next week, bring everything." The file grew. A former board member emailed scan minutes, Pamela bragging about solving the Maddox eyesore. Tom called, "Check your camera on the clubhouse." I watched his maintenance wheel my logs inside. Proof. Camila Torres, contract lawyer, emailed, "This is criminal." I'm in. We sent everything to Linda at the Chronicle. Her front page. HOA seizes firewood, leaves child in the cold. Still frames, quotes the law. My phone exploded. Support poured in. Pamela tried to spin it. Unclaimed property, temporarily repurposed. Nobody bought it. Camila knocked on my door. "This isn't just unethical," she said. "It's illegal, trespass, conversion, maybe reckless endangerment." I said, "I want them exposed." She smiled. "Let's do it." We built the case. Demand letters, complaints, invoices, memos. Linda published a follow-up. Board burns seized firewood while residents freeze. The story hit TV, Reddit. Signs popped up. "Where's our firewood? You burned our trust." The reckoning came in the high school gym. 200 neighbors, angry and ready. Pamela and her lawyer tried to talk. I stood, told the story. "You didn't just take logs. You took the only heat my daughter and I had, then used it for yourselves." Camila laid out the evidence. Tom called for a vote. 173 to remove, 9 abstained. Pamela was out. Her board was out. We didn't cheer, just breathed easier. Spring came slow. Neighbors lingered. The clubhouse became a tool library. Tom, now president, passed new bylaws. Firewood storage protected. No fines without neighbor approval. Pamela moved away. Our story reached all the way to the state legislature. HOA reform passed. Restitution check arrived. I bought a new mall. Ellie and I planted a garden where the pile stood. In the back, we planted a spruce. Lana, she named it. One day, Ellie asked, "Will it happen again?" I crouched, looked her in the eye. "Maybe, but now we know what to do. We stand together. We keep our fire burning." She grinned, fearless. "Then we'll always be ready." That night, we built a fire for the joy of it. Ellie drew our house, smoke rising, the spruce marked with an L. "Our castle is strong now," she wrote. Sometimes justice doesn't roar. Sometimes it's just the quiet crackle of a fire, the hush of spring outside your window, and the simple fact that no one, not a board, not a bully, can take your warmth away if you refuse to let go. So tell me, when did you have to fight for what was right? When did justice come quietly, but change everything? Drop your story below. Let's see how bright we can burn together.